things that he wishes he had done differently. And same thing with Greg Burns. So, we kind of, it's organized in a way that you can kind of pick and choose what you're listening to. You can also watch us on YouTube, although, both of us are highly unshaven right now. So I don't know that that's any better, but, you can put the podcast on your phone. You can listen to it anytime you want while you're cooking dinner.
It doesn't help us that we have a good-looking TV guy coming on. The good thing he's not in the studio.
Exactly. Well, we can't show him. We can't show him.
Two knuckleheads like us, but that's good. We're doing okay.
It's great, and we're happy that people are listening, and we hope you keep listening. We're going to try and keep bringing the quality of guests that we've been bringing the last couple of weeks.
And we're going to go half hour with Yogi. You can call in, of course, 790-2040. But in the final 14 minutes, we're going to get a segment here. You were talking about what you wanted to talk about.
It's 520 Day, because it's May 20th, so 520 Day. So all over social media, there's been polls and questions and things. What's your favorite Tucson sporting event? What's your favorite Tucson sports memory? Stuff like that. We'd love to hear from everybody out there. What was yours? I'm just going to tell you right now, mine's a throwback, pretty far back, because I think it changed a lot of things here in town. But would love to hear what our listeners have in mind in terms of what's their favorite sporting event. It might have been a specific event or just a memory, maybe something you did in Little League or a coach that you had or something that you love about Tucson sports.
Okay, great. So there you have it. There's a lot of things going on. Tomorrow, Bob Baffert. I'm excited to talk to Bob. Maybe he can tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in the Belmont Stakes next month. I'd be really curious to know. I don't know if he's, the kind of guy that'll give us a tip or two, but, he'll probably say, my horse is going to win. But he's got two very good ones.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's never a bad bet to bet on a Baffert horse. No. And, the few times that I've been to the horse races where he's had a horse running, I just always bet on him no matter what.
It's a bit chalky, but guess what? It returns.
It returns. You know what? I don't care how much I win. Exactly. If I win, cashing a ticket is one of the greatest feelings in sports.
Very much
Even
so.
if it's a 220 show ticket. It's the greatest feeling in sports to go to the window and cash a ticket.
210, I'm not too sure, but I agree with you. I agree with you. Hey, let's take the break right now. Come back with Yogi Roth on the other side here on 1030 The Voice.
Trusted local news and talk all day, every day. 1030 The Voice.
Time to update those old kitchen cabinets? Call the Window Depot today. The Window Depot is not only the #1 warehouse for windows and doors, we now have a great selection of kitchen and bath cabinets at Tucson's best prices. The Window Depot is Tucson's top spot for granite and quartz countertops to finish the new kitchen or the replacement of that old worn-out Formica. So call us today at 290-8545 or 622-6430. The Window Depot, windows, doors, granite, and new kitchens.
1030 The Voice. In times of crisis, information is vital.
Director of the Centers for Disease Control, Robert Redfield.
The greatest public health crisis in more than 100 years. A large majority of the American public are taking the social distancing recommendations to heart. Everybody who's not quite there to really go all in on this, if we just social distance, we will see this decline.
Trusted local news and talk about coronavirus. 1030 The Voice.
A social distancing tip.
Keeping your distance from others is important in slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are some fun things to do alone. Read a book, take a walk, unpack your suitcase from that trip you took last September, paint a self-portrait, catch up on a TV series, do a puzzle. Remember, we should all stay home to lower the risk for everyone. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
The Old Pueblo's a place with a lot of great stories to tell. You can find all episodes of the Tucson History Podcast from 1030 The Voice at kvoi.com, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. From the 1967 food giant jet crash to legendary Arizona coach Fred Snowden to the tales of Tucson's days as a Confederate capital, the Tucson History Podcast from 1030 The Voice is concise and always entertaining. Download them now at Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and kvoi.com.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me, I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Hello there, Jim Bohannon here with a look at what I do. I talk on the radio on The Jim Bohannon Show. We cover all the top stories of the day, but we'll also explore sports, entertainment, whatever. One night we even discussed whether the toilet paper should hang over the front or the back of the roll. That's The Jim Bohannon Show from Westwood One. Check us out at JimBohannonShow.com. That's JimBohannonShow.com.
Weeknights at 11 on 1030 The Voice.
Tucson's source for trusted news and talk. 1030 The Voice.
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera alongside Jay Gonzales. We're waiting to hear from Yogi Roth from the Pac-12. And we'll talk sports, of course. A lot of things going on. There was something that was interesting to me. It'll come to me in a second. Have you seen the way too soon top 25 basketball for next year?
No.
Arizona's no part of it. ASU is, which is the world is going to end.
Well, I mean, I guess, the U of A has got to, pick it up a little bit. And Sean Miller, even in that podcast with Steve Kerr and Matt Muehlbach, I mean, he said, it's been a tough couple of years, but we feel like we're climbing out of it. So the fact that he used kind of that word, that we're climbing out of it, suggests that they were way below where he expected them to be.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think Arizona is one of those schools that you just always think they're going to be good just because they've always got pretty good players. Now,
right.
things may happen in the course of a season it doesn't turn out very well. 2 years ago, they weren't even in the tournament. So I don't know. I think you kind of always got to believe that they're going to be good enough to be one of the top 25 teams in the country. That you just do.
Right. And you don't get caught up in that, do you?
Do I? No.
Now in May,
especially not with college basketball, because in the end, it really doesn't matter that much where you are.
Right.
It's where you wind up towards the end of the season, get a good seed in the tournament, and then have at it. I mean, it seems like if Arizona's not ranked, they'll get ranked.
Right.
If they're doing well.
That's how it was in Lute's time.
Right.
Guess what? By November 10th. They were already in the top 10.
Right. And so that's what happens. I think that, that's what teams kind of do. In college basketball, because of the tournament, it always figures itself out. And the right teams generally get into the tournament, and then usually the right team wins the tournament.
Yeah. Let me ask you, you were in the business for a long time, a few years back. I absolutely, and people know me, I absolutely hate recruiting. It's a passion of mine that I hate recruiting.
Well, it was funny because, in the time that I was covering sports, covering recruiting wasn't as big a deal with football and basketball. I mean, you had to cover it to a degree. Now, I had to cover the recruiting of Michael Bates. And, he was a 17-year-old kid playing at Amphi High School. He lived in an apartment basically across the street from the high school. And I would sit out there and wait for him to leave school so I could go find him. And there was nothing I hated more than that. I'm like, I'm 20-some years old. And I mean, I haven't been in this business for a long time.
Right.
But the fact that I've got to follow this 17-year-old kid
to get a decision
all over the place to find out what he's going to do with school, it bothered me.
Yes.
And it really did. And then in college recruiting, again, I was only the beat writer on both of those sports for 2 years, so I didn't have to go deep into it. But, there was a little semblance of basketball recruiting that I had to do too. And I remember I had flown to the Pac-12 preseason meetings before the 88 season, and I was on the same plane as Luke coming back. And as we're walking to our cars at the airport, he hands me a piece of paper. He said, "Here, call this guy." And it was just a torn off piece of paper. It had Mark Georgeson's phone number on it. And so I knew he had gotten his recruit, and I called him.
Right, good. Now on the phone we have Yogi Roth of the Pac-12. Yogi, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Great to have you on the show.
Yogi, this is Jay Gonzales.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We wanted to spend some time actually talking about football. As opposed,
here we go.
God, I mean, obviously anything we talk about is kind of flavored by the stuff going on with COVID, but we're so tired of talking about that. You probably are too. And I watched the webinars last week, and the reason we wanted to talk to you was just, get some of your impressions of the coaches. You got to spend some time with all 12 of the coaches, 3 new ones. Just give me some of your takeaways, of the coaches in the league, what they're thinking about, and how things are going with them.
It was really enjoyable for me. I spent a lot of time preparing for it because it's not like when you just sit down with David Shaw or Kevin Sumlin, Herm Edwards, like, what you're going to ask. Right? And I could do that in my sleep, right? Like, you're going to ask about Davis Mills, Jaden Daniels, Grant Cannell. Like, what you're going to talk about, right?
Right.
It's way different when the 3 of them are there. And thankfully, the Pac-12 networks, one of our greatest assets is we get access. So I get to sit in on meetings. I get to know coaches differently. So personality-wise, that was the dance that I had to prepare for. And I'll be honest, man, it was so fun. The coaches had a blast. They came on and joked with each other, talked with each other. If you were on early as a member of the media, and this part didn't make the public for the most part, but you saw them, joking with each other and just talking about life in general. So I had a blast. I can go on forever about every one of them, but fundamentally, it was a real joy to watch 3 leaders of 3 programs connect with each other and then talk about real stuff over the course of that time together.
I don't know if you do this, but I do this as a reporter every now and again when you have these guys who are head coaches and you listen to them talk and you're thinking you're listening to their answer, but you're also saying, this dude's a really smart guy. You get the impression of their personalities or whatever. Did you think of that at all, and maybe who impressed you in that light?
Well, everybody's been really impressive. I was at Kyle Whittingham's first press conference in 2004, which, I'm like, dang, I've been doing this for a while now, But I think, the new coaches, that's what stood out to me. Carl Durrell, probably the most, because he's the guy who I had the most limited interaction with. Only interviewed him a handful of times since he was at Colorado. I was coaching at USC when he was at UCLA, so I never got to beat him. So to see him as comfortable as he was, and he's in the most challenging situation. We're just going to be blunt about it, right? In terms of when he came in, style in which he came in, late in recruiting, and then COVID-19, he doesn't know his team. Thankfully he kept coordinators and some of the staff, so I think that's going to help them, versus, if it was a completely brand new unit there. But that he was really impressive, because I talked to Josh Rosen and Patrick Laird, guys who played for the Dolphins, and they all raved about him, and the hire was made about the type of man that he was, and one answer, you can tell that he's that guy that's going to be there for a long time, and players and parents are going to trust, and clearly he knows football.
Well, it was interesting to me when they made the hire, because, and again, I don't know these guys, but when he got the job at UCLA and you just saw him, there were times when you just thought maybe there was a little much for him. He brought a great team down here, an undefeated team, to Tucson, and got crushed by a pretty mediocre Arizona team. And you just I remember seeing him on the sidelines in that game, and he got overwhelmed that game. But, having seen, how he handled the UCLA job versus, the conversation that you've been able to have with him, can you see a big difference? Can you see was the growth already visible? Can you see it from the little bit of time you've had with him?
You're talking about Coach Durrell, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut out for a second there. I think so. I really believe this, that when pro coaches come to college, it's a huge advantage. I was around Carroll, obviously the most intimate situation. I was also around it with Dave Wannstedt when he came from the NFL at the University of Pittsburgh. Same thing here with Coach Durrell. Same thing with David Shaw. You can kind of go down the list of guys. Jimmy Lake. When guys have had that experience in the league, I just think the issues that pop up on college campus, Herm Edwards, of course, an example, they're just not that big of an issue, right? Because nothing compares. And I wouldn't agree with this unless I spent a season with the Seahawks and Pete. I followed him for a whole year with NFL Films, his second or third year. And you see the pressure that these guys deal with. It's so much different than college. It's 100x. Here's my example. I was at the Rose Bowl, national title, Texas versus Alabama. This is Colt McCoy, way back in the day. He gets injured on the first drive. Might have been the first play. Right, in comes a freshman. Alabama ends up winning. I think that was McElroy's title, and away they went. And I was standing next to Pete, and he was about to take the Seahawks job. And I said, aren't you going to miss this? We looked around the Rose Bowl, and he had obviously owned the Rose Bowl. He goes, of course I'm going to miss it, but every Sunday in the league is like this. And I was like, really? Like, kind of like my ears perked up, like, NFL sounds kind of cool. Like, are you serious? And he's right. So I think Coach Terrell coming back amid the pandemic, amid not getting to know his players, amid not having time with his staff, like, he's so organized. And then you dive into it, and I've talked to members of his staff. He's done what everybody who comes back to college or gets their second shot at being a head coach has done. He's got uncompromising principles. He'll tell his staff, well, I won't flinch on this. And that, to me, is a great sign of somebody who knows what they're doing.
Well, I've got a question. Who's got the advantage with the fact that none of these guys have had spring ball? The guys that that have been there a while, or these new coaches who are coming in and nobody knows what they're going to look like? I mean, is there any advantage for either one? Do they offset? I mean, who's got the advantage of everybody being unknown going into this season because nobody knows anything about anybody?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say Arizona State is the best advantage because I think they got 7 or 8 practices in, which was, almost double any other team. Right? So I give them that. They return not only a quarterback, but they return pretty much their entire defense, which is huge. So if anybody has it, it's them. I think among the new teams or just among the rest of the coaches, it's hard. Like, you'd say Jimmy Lake has the best advantage of the first-year head coaches, but he doesn't have a quarterback who's ever played. Jacob Sermon, he's played a handful of snaps against like Hawaii and North Dakota State, I think. Like, he hasn't really played, and he's got a new offensive coordinator. So that balances out for him. Great advantage. He knows the guys. He recruited everybody on offense, but never got to practice with them. And that state is going to be one of the last ones to open. So I think it's a tough question, but you probably end up going with culture. And Utah, Stanford, Oregon have 3 of the strongest cultures right now in this conference.
No question. Let's go on a break real quick here on 10:30 The Voice and come back on the other side of the Yogi Rough.
CBS News at the top and bottom of every hour. 1030 The Voice, Tucson's trusted local news and talk.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Investors took back today most of what they lost in the last hour of trading yesterday, and the averages rose 1.5 to 2.1%. The Dow up 369, the Nasdaq 191, the S&P 49. Investors are going with their hopes businesses will continue to reopen without relapses. They also were soothed by word Federal Reserve policymakers stand ready to offer businesses more help if needed. Delta Airlines CEO is sidestepping that prediction from a trade group that airline demand could take as long as 5 years to recover. Delta CEO says he's confident travel will return in the next year to year and a half. For now, though, the travel website Kayak tells Reuters it's seeing more demand for car rentals as customers are looking to avoid crowds and vacation close to home. The parent company of Victoria's Secret hasn't changed its mind about setting up its Bath & Body Works chain as a public company and making Victoria's Secret and its pink businesses a separate standalone company. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
CBS News update. 10,000 evacuated, up to 9 feet of water in the streets. Days of heavy rain have led to catastrophic flooding in central Michigan. Midland County Commissioner Mark Bone.
Due to the amount of water across the county, it will take multiple days to recede. It's also possible we won't even hit the 24-foot flood stage until the end of the weekend or later.
Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
We're going to get through this. It is a tough time, to be sure, but we are going to get through this. We know that tough times don't last, but tough people do.
2 dams near Midland have failed due to surging waters. Correspondent Michael George.
In 2018, the Edenville Dam was given an unsatisfactory condition rating by the state. Governor Whitmer says her administration is examining what caused both dams to fail and will pursue legal action if necessary.
President Trump is sending in the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA to assist. CBS News update. I'm Jim Chenevey.
These days, most families are concerned with having the right insurance coverage. Protecting your family, home, auto, and other valuable possessions can be challenging and sometimes expensive. Crest Insurance gives you flexible options and solutions while saving you money. Insurance is not one size fits all, and at Crest, we find the coverage that's best for you and your family. Visit us online at www.crestins.com or call us toll free at 888-881-5765.
This is Bill Buckmaster. The Buckmaster Show features Arizona newsmakers and more than 24 Buckmaster Show contributors. Everything from foreign affairs to the arts is on the table and open for discussion, and your calls from one end of southern Arizona to the other. The Buckmaster Show, weekdays live during the noon hour on 1030 Tucson's Voice for Trusted News Talk, always on buckmastershow.com.
Trusted local news and talk, all day, every day. 1030 The Voice.
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera alongside Jay Gonzales. On the phone, we have the Pac-12's Yogi Roth. Yogi, I'm curious, you've spoken to someone a number of times. You spoke to him again last week. What were your impressions with him? Does he feel more comfortable in year 3?
Oh, yeah. I'm a huge fan of him, to be honest. You look back on it, and it was a big get, right, for Arizona. Like, Kevin Sumlin could have easily sat out that year and gotten any job. Could argue in the country when you look at the coaches that were, in air quotes, free agents. And I think it took him some time to settle in. Obviously, I think that happens with every program to a degree. They had injuries, they had issues, and not just with Bill, but on the offensive front at some key positions. And now I just feel as though he's really part of that community. I think it takes, and Chris Peterson taught me this, his first year on the job at Washington, that it takes at least 18 months to build the culture. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And for some programs that don't have maybe the prestige that UW has, and I don't say that I'm trying to slight Arizona. I just say that with like games won, Pac-12 titles, et cetera, et cetera. I just think it took a little bit longer for him there. And I'm really excited to watch them this year. I'm excited for Noel Mazzoni. I adore Paul Rhodes. I played for him in college. I think he's a head coach anywhere in the country, and he shouldn't have left Iowa State, or he should have left Iowa State when he had the opportunity, but he stayed loyal to that program before he ended up getting let go. So it's a big move by them, and I think Coach Sumlin was as comfortable, with everybody as I've seen him. He's always been great with us, and with me in particular, and it was fun to have him on with the other two coaches because I think they all had a good time. And out of all the 4 days, that was the one that had the question mark where you're like, what's this one going to go like? And Dave Hirsch and I were talking about it, like Wilcox, Cristobal, Sumlin, I don't know, and it ended up going great.
Well, when you talk about Sumlin, he was a good get. I mean, arguably he was the guy that everybody in town wanted. It didn't go so well the first couple of years, and I think a whole lot of that was, the Khalil Tate factor and what was going on there, and who knows what all of that was, but he did seem a lot more comfortable to me in the webinar last week than maybe he had seemed other times, and it may just be as simple as that. But I want to ask you, having been a coach, they're basically going to condense everything that they normally would have done in the spring to cram it into the fall in strange times with there's probably going to be a lot of strange ways that they're going to have to practice and be around each other. How hard is that going to be? I heard Kyle Whittingham say, we've got 3 quarterbacks, and we're going to have to narrow down to 2 right away. That's something that they kind of would have been able to take a good long look at in the spring, and they can't do that now. What's going to be some of the effect of all of that and how these guys are going to be able to conduct camp to get ready for games?
Well, it's going to be fluid, right? That's the word that every coach to a T used. I got off a call today with Commissioner Scott, and we had an all-staff meeting at the conference and the networks. And what was really cool about that was that we learned that when the conference commissioners talk every morning, the people that are leading the conversation is our conference because of the schools that we have, Arizona and what they're doing with testing on campus specifically. Stanford, obviously, the pedigree there, Washington, UCLA, USC, on and on and on. These, medical departments are leading the charge around the country. So we could hear from, other people around the country, whether it's on ESPN or other platforms, taking shots at the Pac-12. And the reality is the Pac-12 is leading the dialogue and leading how coaches are going to deal with it, in my opinion. And I think it's just going to be fluid. I think they're going to figure it out as they go. The one thing I do know, though, is that players not only are itching to get back. I just sat in on a team meeting with Arizona State. It's going to air Thursday night on the Pac-12 network. It's awesome. I got to sit in with Zach Cale, their OC, Jaden Daniels, Herm, the whole thing. Take you inside how guys teach. And a big takeaway for me was guys are chomping at the bit. And I think we're going to have the tightest teams in recent history in college football. Think about it. There's so much divisiveness in college football because of Instagram, because of branding, because of name, image, and likeness will be coming up. There's so much on teams that now guys are like, I just want to practice. I just want to play. So I think coaches, I think it's going to be hard. I think they're going to have to take care of guys' bodies, and I think they're going to have to trust their players that when they say, hey, let's go, and maybe practice isn't 22 periods, in mid-August, it's 12 because they haven't done it in a long time, then the kids have to bring it. And I think they will. I really do, and I think our coaches are going to lead the way in those discussions around player safety amid returning to campus.
Jay and I have been talking about this daily. It changes, the line in the sand changes almost daily. I'm sure 2 weeks ago, how did you feel? Did you think they were going to come back in time? And what do you think now? I think it's more positive now, but do you still think it's going to be a full schedule or maybe a changed schedule?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I wish I could answer that. I mean, of course, what do we hope? We hope
right.
The full schedule. I hope Alabama and SC play in Texas, right? I hope that Michigan travels to Seattle. I don't care if there's fans there or not. I hope that Oregon plays Ohio State at home. But what I don't hope is that one of those teams leave their footprint and either catch coronavirus, have coronavirus, spread coronavirus. I think there is something to the regionality. At least from everything I heard today on the radio, sounds like the NBA is taking everything to Disney, Disney World in Florida or Disneyland, whichever one it's called, to play there. College football is not going to necessarily do that. At least I can't imagine it. But I think there's something to what's paramount. It's playing the most games, right? What's paramount is the health and safety of the student athletes. Next is playing the game so, not only we get the game that we love, but to be blunt, right, these universities can survive. Right, and it's an interesting time, and I think that's a really tricky balance between those two things. And everything on the West Coast, nobody's putting health and wellness above games and TV money, and I don't think anybody's doing that in the country. But at least as a fan base, I think that Pac-12 footprint is very aware of hey, let's do what's right here versus screw it, we're rolling into Tuscaloosa, we don't care, which is just maybe to be expected. Definitely embarrassing for everybody who doesn't think that way in that community, but maybe that's just something we get used to.
Well, we did talk to Greg Byrne on Tuesday, or was it Monday?
Oh,
Monday.
Nice. What did he say?
What day is this?
Well, he said all the right things. He said, because I posed a question. I said, it sounds like you guys are going no matter what. And we don't want to leave everybody behind. And we're gonna, everybody's on the same page, and we're all kind of in this together. And maybe they are, but who knows? But let me ask you this. When they hit the field and games start being played, do you see this as a year where the quality of the coaching staff and the job that they do is going to make the biggest difference? I mean, where there may be times where best players, aren't going to necessarily win games because of all the things that have led up to this season and the jobs that the coaching staff's had to do to get their teams ready. Do you feel like coaching is going to have even bigger impact this year, or is it going to be the opposite? You're going to throw your guys on the field and everybody's under the same, had the same amount of time to work on this, and if you've got the better players, you're just going to win games.
No, I mean, look, granted, if Alabama rolls out there against Kansas, they're probably going to win if they practice one day or 6 weeks. Right? We all get that. There's definitely like Kyle Whittingham said, there's a lot of inequities in college football that we could talk about for a really long time.
Right.
But I think to your point, it's the staff, and it might even be the support staff. When I vote for Coach of the Year, it's probably going to be what medical department kept their players the safest. Because it's going to be about, and that's why I love the Pac-12. I appreciate what Greg Byrne said, But clearly there's backtracking, and that's happened in a couple places. What has the Pac-12 done is nobody stepped out in front of anybody else. And there's been a great unity. And that's why I think the calls were so good a week ago. I think that's why the Pac-12 conference is leading all the calls with the commissioners every morning on the medical front, because they're just connected. And they have said, like, hey, we're kind of rolling, we're in this together. Like, I get that different states have different rules, but at the end of the day, like, what are we talking about here, right? We're still talking about sports. And I think all those decisions will eventually make themselves. But to actually answer your question, I think the staffs that keep their guys healthy and keep them engaged and keep them connected are going to be the best. Because here's an option that may happen. Let's just say that, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but Arizona plays USC. Let's pretend it's midseason because I don't know when it is. And somebody from USC has COVID-19, a long snapper. Well, there's a world where both of those teams have to be quarantined for 2 weeks. So how does the coaching staff, the academic staff, the support, keep their guys engaged? Keep them fit, if that is an answer to when someone gets it, because that's still the thing that hasn't really been talked a ton about, of when someone gets it, how do we deal with it? And I think college football is going to learn from the NBA, Major League Baseball, other leagues around the world in that regard. But that's going to be the MVP. It's going to be the staffs that are so connected, so united on everything. Because guys, they fall through the cracks, right? We could read all the articles about the public school system and how, like, this is unfortunately taken opportunity away from some underprivileged individuals all over the world because of this. It's going to be the same thing in football. Some guys are just going to fall through the cracks. So that's going to be the challenge of these staffs. And I got full confidence in the Pac-12 staffs to keep it connected. But that's going to be a challenge. There's a lot happening, right? Recruiting, game planning. So I think game plans will probably simplify. Execution will be a premium. I hope the recruiting calendar shifts, but again, it'll be dramatically fluid. And I hope the NCAA and the CFP and ultimately ESPN, who you can't really argue they run college football with all the money that's in it. I hope they're fluid with the rules and the restrictions and all the things that kind of come about within college football as it gets going.
Yogi, we've got about a minute left, but I'm curious, you used to play the game at a Division I level, Pittsburgh. How would you feel about coming back under these circumstances?
Well, I was crazy. I would have came back no matter what. I would have been like, well, I got a chance to play. Let's go. But as a parent now,
right,
and it changes. I talked to a parent of an Oregon athlete today. I talked to Cale Millen's dad, Hugh Millen, who played quarterback at UW and the Hall of Fame there. I asked him that exact question. And he said it's hard. Like, you got to trust. You got to trust. And that's why I hope everybody in college football does the right thing, right? Like, let's hope we don't see somebody hide a corona test, right? Like you could, in my day, you hit a concussion potentially, right? And I don't expect that to happen, but I would want to play. I don't think players have a ton of, I don't think they're thinking that far down the road. I think they're like, all right, as long as I get tested, I'm cool. Like, let me go ball, let me go do my thing. The guys who my heart breaks for are high school seniors. And I hope they move high school football to the spring and thus move signing day, to give guys a chance that were 150 pounds last year but are 180 pounds now, finally hit a growth spurt and could play outside backer. They play tailback, and they could be a Power 5 player, but they won't get a chance because there's been no spring recruiting, and, of course, there may not be a season for some of these guys. So that's kind of where my heart goes.
Yogi, we really appreciate your time. We hope you can come back soon.
Anytime.
We'd love to have you, man.
Sorry for being a little late.
We got to get you back so you can tell us who's going to win the Pac-12.
Right. That was Yogi
Can I
Roth.
get to training camp first?
Well, yes. we'll give you that much.
Thanks, Yogi.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. That was Yogi Roth of the Pac-12. Here on 10 Through the Voice. We'll get back to you on the other side.
Your source for trusted local news and talk. 1030 The Voice.
For nearly 7 decades, Hughes Federal Credit Union has been there for its members through good times and bad. We know that by working together, we can achieve great things, like addressing your financial needs during these uncertain times. We're available for you by phone or online, via our website or mobile app. Our drive-up windows are open, and we're available to help you in our branch lobbies by appointment. We've got your back today, tomorrow, and for decades to come. Visit HughesFCU.org, insured by NCUA.
If you like sitting around the porch or dinner table sharing stories with friends, that's what we like to do here at Our American Stories. I'm Lee Habib, and each weeknight we bring to you stories about American love, funny stories about first jobs, this day in history, American dreamers and marriages, and even the stories of music and acting legends. I invite you to sit around the porch with us as we share Our American Stories.
Evenings from 7 to 9 on 1030 The Voice, Tucson's trusted local news and talk.
Trusted local news and talk. 1030 The Voice.
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 1030 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera alongside Jay Gonzales here on a Wednesday afternoon. You know what? I didn't acknowledge you, Tom. I'm sorry about that. Are you awake over there?
I am awake. I got to my coffee a little late, so I was a little yawny today, but I'm good.
Let me ask you something. You've heard all this optimism today, Mr. Cranky Pants, earlier this week. Are you still Cranky Pants?
I'm always Cranky Pants, first of all. Second of all, you know what? Yogi brought up a point, and it's something, Steve, I never thought of until he mentioned it. What if somebody hides a test?
I laughed because it could happen.
Oh, sure it could, and that's frightening.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
Did you think of that? I hadn't thought of that.
No, you know what? He was making my head spin with everything else. I mean, I didn't think of that.
It's true, though. It's in today's world.
Who knows? God.
This is big business, guys. I don't care what anybody says.
No, you're right. You see, you are still kind of the naysayer.
I'm always a cynic. Always.
We're glad we have you. Just stay in your corner over there.
That's right. Get off my lawn, Steve.
Don't come over on our side. No, but it's true. Hey, so go give me your idea, Jay, about the best times in Tucson sports.
Well, you know, we've been talking about, you know, today's May 20th, so it's 520 day in Tucson, and people have been, you know, on social media and everywhere talking about their their best sporting event they've ever been to, or best sports memory, or whatever. So I'm going to throw this out, and would love to get a caller or two to give us theirs. But you know, as everybody knows, I was born here. I've lived here all my life. Been going to U of A football games since forever. I mean, I remember going to U of A football games before the upper deck on the east side was built. So that's how long I go back.
Are you sure you're just 60?
I'm only 60. Look, I have a good, you know, my memory is great from a little kid up until about 5 years ago, and now it's all fuzzy again. You know, the last 5 years have been kind of fuzzy to me.
Right.
I'm gonna go with the 1982 U of A ASU football game. The reason being that for me as a sports fan in this town, that's where I think things kind of started to turn, and Arizona became it started to dominate ASU in football. Lute Olson arrives a year later, and the whole basketball thing starts. And I feel like that 1982 season was where things sort of flipped over, and it became a good thing to be an Arizona fan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and earlier in that year, Arizona had beaten Notre Dame at Notre Dame but a team that turned out to not be very good.
Was that Larry Smith's first year?
That was Larry Smith's second year.
Okay.
Actually, no, his third year.
Okay.
His third year. And that 82 game, ASU came in here. They had already they needed to beat Arizona to go to the Rose Bowl. And that was a time where you if you were an Arizona fan, you just did not want ASU to go to the Rose Bowl before Arizona did. And all ASU had to do was beat Arizona that day. And Arizona was like a 5-5 team or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They needed to win the game just to not have a losing season. And out of nowhere, they beat the you-know-what out of them.
Yeah.
They beat them, I think it was 28-18, a couple of safeties, a couple of long passes. And then, ASU fans had come to the game, and they were carrying roses and had them between their teeth and had them in their hair. And
where did they have them after the game?
And well, it's funny because where we sat at that particular time, we were on the east side of the stadium, section 102. So we're basically about the 10-yard line on the north end. And there were some people right in front of us who were ASU fans, and they were waving their roses in our faces and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the game, all the roses were on the ground. In fact, as I recall, one of my brothers who tended to be a little
tended to or still is?
Well, yeah, he still is, tended to be a little confrontational, let's say. And I remember him picking up a handful of roses, snapping them in half and throwing them at the Arizona State fans.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. That was good.
But to me, that was sort of a turning point for U of A sports in Tucson.
Yeah.
Because now we beat ASU. We beat the best team that they probably ever had. Some people might say the 75 team was better, but that team was going to the Rose Bowl, and Arizona stopped that. And like I said, the decade of the 80s in Arizona sports was a whole lot better just because of that.
Yeah, no question. In fact, that game, I've been here 30-some years now. You grew up in it. That game, you have no idea who's going to win that day.
No, well, at that time I hated going to the U of A ASU football game. I hated it because Arizona always lost.
Mm-hmm.
They had only won a couple of times in my lifetime, and so it was. I still dread the game mostly because I dread the fans. But
up there or here, both.
I mean, I go to the game here. I don't go to the game up there anymore.
Okay.
But the thing of it is that if you were growing up here in the 60s and 70s, Arizona always lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful, and it was no fun, and that was where it kind of turned around. That 82 game was when the quote-unquote streak started, and Arizona either won or tied 9 games in a row. So, to me, that turned sports in Tucson around. And then, like I said, Lute came in and basically changed the city with what he did with the program. I mean, if you've lived in Tucson all your life, think about what this city would be like if we didn't have Arizona basketball.
Oh.
So everything changed in that couple of years.
You'd be Albuquerque.
Oh, wow.
Sorry to tell you that. But it's true. You wouldn't be the identity that you have.
Yeah. The Tucson's identity in a lot of respects, whether you're a sports fan or not, you feel better about Tucson because of its basketball program. And at that time, you also started feeling better about the U of A and Tucson because of the football program.
Right.
So that's why that sticks out to me. There have been a lot of other great sporting events and things that I've been to here.
Washington,
the beating Washington when they were number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the big Arizona basketball wins.
So give me one right now, because that's what I did for 30 years, and I have one. They all pale because they're all been big time stuff.
Well, again, to me, when I think of a game that was great like that,
it makes total sense.
It's always a game that meant something for the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And the game that I go to was that game they call the McShot.
Yeah.
Where Arizona threw the lob pass,
Mm-hmm.
Craig McMillan picked up a loose ball and laid it in to beat Oregon State.
Right.
And that was sort of we flipped it over.
Right.
Oregon State is not the dominant team in the league anymore. Here comes Arizona.
Right.
And the rest was history. So that game sticks out to me. And again, I went to that game as a fan. I wasn't a sports writer yet. And I remember being out of my mind at that game, at the end of that game.
Yeah. I would have said that was one of my top 5.
Now, another one that sticks out for me was in the 1979 season, I believe it was, when Arizona beat UCLA here in basketball. Larry Demick, Joe Nels, John Smith.
Wasn't it a back-to-back weekends when they beat USC?
They beat UCLA and USC, and they did it on it was a Saturday, Monday. Again, at that time, the Pac-10 would have a Monday night game. So it was, and UCLA came in here ranked number 4.
Mm-hmm.
They were still UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they didn't win a national championship, but they were still UCLA. They were ranked 4th in the country, and that was a time as a student. You can tell how far back this was. At McHale Center, 3 of the lower sections around the court was the student seating, and it was bleachers. And only one section, the section that's currently across from the bench, the lower section, that was the higher paid seats. So the students had 3 lower sections around the court, and if it was a 7:30 game, they opened the doors at 4. You had to get in line at 2 to get one of those seats, and it was general admission. So you got in and you ran down to the floor to get a seat in the bleachers.
How'd that work?
I always got one, and my best friend and I went to the game. We rushed the court when they won the game, and it was one of the greatest things that we ever did.
You talked about the UCLA game. The USC game was a famous game because I think Nels, whatever it was the spaghetti game.
It was the spaghetti company game, and I think that was one of the games that led to them going out of business because there were 15 at that time because of the bleachers around the seats.
Right.
The capacity was 15,000 and change.
Yeah.
And at the USC game, you got a coupon when you walked in the door for dinner at Spaghetti Company, and if they won, you got. And
they won. They had to score over a certain amount of points or whatever.
No, they just had to win. They just had. I think they just had to win. Well, I don't know what it was.
Whatever
it was, everybody in the house got
right.
And I remember for weeks you'd go to Spaghetti Company, and half the people were using those coupons.
Right. I remember because I've written about it a few times.
Yeah.
But it was that weekend.
It was that weekend, back to back.
Right.
You know, that was the first time I ever saw the "I was there" T-shirts, and we had there were red T-shirts.
Yeah.
I was there. Put the scores of the two games.
Now they're towels, or they're not even out there. No, but I remember that. It was a big win. There's so many games you could talk about. So many. The one that came to mind real quick was the Salim Stoudemire hitting over Aaron Aflalo from deep.
Oh, but he just walked up and hit that.
He said, "You can't guard me." Boom, and it was over. So, and that wasn't a really big game. It was a good game.
It was a great game. And some of those Duke games.
Oh yeah, sure.
And all that stuff.
Sure.
But yeah,
we'll get into down the summer when we have the summer blues. Hey, good show today. Thank you. Tomorrow,
great
Bob
to have
Baffert.
Yogi Roth, Bob Baffert tomorrow. We'll get us a couple of Belmont Stakes tips.
Yeah, we got a month left. Thanks, Jay. We'll talk to everybody tomorrow here on 10:30 The Voice.
Hi, this is Jim Click. Tucson's been hit hard by this pandemic. To keep Pima County safe, you need to keep your home. Governor Ducey knows this and issued an order to help. If you've lost income because of COVID-19 or quarantine, have a school-age child at home, or a health condition that increases your risk of illness, you can notify your landlord in writing and delay an eviction. You will still owe back rent. Talk about a payment plan with your landlord today. Without housing, we lose jobs.
Hey, good afternoon.
To go to the window and cash a ticket.
210, I'm not too sure, but yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Hey, let's take the break right now. Come back with Yogi Roth on the other side.
Time to update those old kitchen cabinets? Call the Window Depot today. The Window Depot is not only the #1 warehouse for windows and doors.
The Old Pueblo's a place with a lot of great stories to tell. You can find all episodes of the Tucson History Podcast.
Hey, it's me.
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 10:30 The Voice.
But you probably end up going with culture.
10:30 The Voice, and come back on the other side of the Yogi Roth.
CBS News.
This is a Bloomberg.
These days, most families are concerned with having the right insurance coverage.
This is Bill Buckman.
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 10:30 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera.
The training camp first.
Well,
Yes.
we'll give you that much.
Thanks, Yogi.
For nearly 7 decades, Hughes Federal Credit Union has been there for its members through
Hey, welcome back to Eye on the Ball here on 10:30 The Voice. I'm Steve Rivera alongside Jay Gonzales here on a Wednesday afternoon. You know what? I didn't acknowledge you, Tom. I'm sorry about that. Are you awake over there?
I am awake. I got to my coffee a little